ideal, more, and in many cases because they don't have the examples around them to really follow. And so they are trying to get to that place and cannot get to that place. And eventually their concept of self, their self-image, their self-concept is destroyed. And they fade away. So when you look at the impact and the psychological implications, it is, well, this evening is not enough to really talk about it. I'm going to stop here.
All right. So anybody else from your panel have a want to add to that?
Good afternoon, everybody. Just to add to what my brother is saying, I come from the school environment, and what he's saying is so real. Many of the young men who I encounter on a daily basis, they have a false understanding of what a man is. And the information that they get in terms of who a man is, or the roles of a man, come from what they interact with and who they interact with. And many young people interact with social media heavily, and they interact with persons from their community or families where the role of a man is not defined in spiritual terms. So their understanding of who a man is really incorrect and informs a lot of the behaviors that we see in school and by extension in society.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, they covered it quite well, and what I would want to add to it is that, in being a man, or the idea of a man and how it affects your mental health, you will understand that we see it in, TV shows, we see it in the media in terms of that bottled up aggression that persons have, because that is also an aspect of the idea that somebody has in terms of them being a man, being aggressive. And aggression sometimes is only the only emotion that you would see in a man, not knowing that it has other emotions behind those particular emotions. But when we interact with them, right, you would see just aggression, irritability, and we see it on the news, we see it on the media, and we also see it in where persons of leadership exist, presidents and stuff like that, that they are aggressive. So it's easy to model that particular behavior because it's acceptable by society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know where I heard it, but they say that one of the easiest things to model is aggression. As a child grows, is the easiest thing that they pick up. So they've hitting out in school early because they see their father, their mother, whoever, going on that road, right? So we have another question which says, we often hear the terms like alpha male, toxic masculinity, and soft life. What are the psychological impacts of these ideas? Because a lot of them tied to social media and all of these things just the same, right? So what you guys have to say about that?
You hear young men speaking of the term alpha male a lot. Mm-hmm. And they strive to be alpha males. But when you think about the term alpha male, I think about the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. And if we think about an alpha male in the animal kingdom, what are some of his traits or attributes? He seeks to dominate his territory. Without asking questions, without asking permission, he dominates his territory. After he dominates his territory, he seeks to acquire as much females as possible to reign over. And after he would have used or misused and abused and refused, he goes his way. That is the alpha male. Aggression, dominance, procreate. But God has called us, and I equate that to toxic masculinity as well. Mm-hmm. But God has called us to be masculine men. Yeah. Now that is something totally different. A masculine man is somebody who is emotionally aware, who is able to manage his emotions, who is able to function in spite of the things that he feels, who is able to show kindness, who is able to show love, who is able to show compassion. And these are some of the traits that pop culture sees as weak, as soft, and promotes dominance and promotes aggression.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to touch based on the toxic masculinity because, it's a word that is thrown around today. And, you want to know where does that term come from, toxic masculinity? As you said earlier, you went for a definition, you didn't see any. You didn't see any definition. So that means it's very subjective in nature, right? But one thing you have to understand is what creates, quote unquote, that toxic masculinity. Is it the systems that exist, or is it how men are socialized? Yeah. So the same systems that socialize a man will call a man a toxic male. You understand? The same system that socializes that man calls him a toxic male. And sometimes he's just a product of his environment. Right?
Yeah, and if I should jump in and join the conversation, the idea of the toxic masculinity, there is a drive in society to eliminate and poison the mind as it relates to the idea of patriarchy. And there's I believe, an agenda. That's my personal belief. There's an agenda, and I really think the agenda is against the Bible. So you create an idea that the whole idea of patriarchy is evil and is the cause for all the abuse. And whenever we talk about domestic violence, we look at it in the context of what men do to women and things like that. And the idea, I remember the first time I heard toxic masculinity was from a guy. He talks a lot about male. I can't remember his name. That was the first time I heard it. But he's always on YouTube and so on, and talks a lot about male and talks about it. But he has some very strange concepts about masculinity and maleness and so on. But of course, the idea, it is carried on the idea that male masculinity, as the world has it, is very poisonous, it's toxic, and when you behave a particular way, then your masculinity is toxic. But also pegged to the idea is the concept or the intention to poison the idea of masculinity, which lays a foundation for the present mindset as it relates to homosexuality and LGBT and so on. So eliminate the whole issue of maleness and femaleness and so on. So it is part of the intention of it is to go at that. Of course, no Christian man wants his masculinity to be considered toxic. Yeah. And so those two concepts really goes with each other. Of course, we have the other term, soft life. So, right. So the idea, the opposite, right? So you have the males who are more aggressive and so on. And we say that is toxic. That's not what it's really supposed to be. But then there's also the idea of the male who is now more gentle. And there's the possess a healthy portion of his feminine side, in want of a better word, and so on. And again, I personally believe that there is that apparent agenda to make masculinity, or to move masculinity, maleness, and man away from the original intention as God intended for it to be. And so even as we relate to it, we have to be very mindful as to how we internalize these terms and these labels that are placed and that comes up in society.
Yeah, and I believe that is a buzzword. Toxic masculinity is a buzzword because people don't seem to understand what masculinity is, right? So, apparently, I fall into that category, right? And I think that a lot of it is really just because you, I know what I want, I know what I stand for, and I'm willing to tell you, right? And that is something that is rub people the wrong way when you're a little blunt, when you're a little forward, and that is toxic. Because what we're supposed to be doing is, as men, we're supposed to dilly and dally and jump around issues and these kind of things. That's crazy. And I think that what we experiencing today is not masculinity, because masculinity controls emotions, as I said earlier. Controls emotions, has a clear direction, and works toward the goals, right? In my opinion. Sorry, I don't mean to exclude anyone. But that is my thing, right? And today we see an attack on that because we need to be more gentle. And gentleness is good. And that is part of being a man. But it have extremes that being pushed. And the lines that we trying to make men into women, in my humble opinion, right? A man cannot be a woman. And a woman cannot be a man. Different function, different role, different everything. So me being gentle and a woman being gentle is two different things. And I would like the audience to contribute because I don't want to dominate. But if you let the world tell it, you're going to be wearing a dress just now. Right? So we have to be mindful of these kind of things. We have comment any? Okay,
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So I have a question. When you pose the question of toxic masculinity, right? You wanted what is socially described as toxic masculinity, or what is actually toxic masculinity?
I think we know a bit about to get to where we want to be.
All right, no problem. And just now, when Brother Winchester was making this point, he spoke about being a little bit more in touch with your feminine side.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if this is an incorrect concept, but I don't think I have a feminine side. I have a side that is less aggressive. I have a side that is less, abrasive, and I have gentleness and love and kindness and softness in my experience. But I have it as that is not feminine. That's just me as a man.
That's great.
So I don't have a feminine side, right? So when I provide gentleness and kindness and these things to somebody, I provide it in a masculine context, right? So when we frame those things as a feminine side, we indirectly start to take away from what you provide. So now when I trying to be a man, I would stray away from the things that we term feminine. When I trying to prove my masculinity as a 20-year-old, 19, 21, I trying to insert myself in the world and really stand up strong. I am straying away from anything that is referred to as feminine. So when I term that as my feminine side, I don't want that part of my life. But when I take that part, I am off balance as an individual. I become difficult to deal with. I become part of the toxic culture, right? Because when I stray away from the kindness and the compassion, all I have left is aggression and domination, and I seek everything becomes a competition. I want to be the best. I want to be better than everybody in my space all the time, right? So I feel like because we term a lot of things we term a lot of things as my feminine or softer. Men who don't have these kind of platforms and this kind of experience might stray away from them, again, in an attempt to establish yourself. And the toxic masculinity is that, is the aggression and the domination without compassion, without care, without consideration, which way to go, right? And the society also, like they use you ever realize they use the LGBTQ movement and they started on racial equality? You ever realize that? So they always talk about human rights, and they start on a positive point and twist it, right? So toxic masculinity starts on a positive point, on a correct point, which is these things are bad for society and bad for individuals. And they start to attach a set of other things to it, things that a man needs in his life. And they start to attach it to toxic masculinity. The ability to stand on something, make a decision and stand on it, right? they start oh gosh, the feedback button. Right, so they start term it as toxic when you're not easily bent to one way or another. They start term it as toxic when you're driven. When, as Joshua termed it, when you know what you want and you're willing to, you understand that in pursuit of a goal, there are sacrifices. Right? So everything they say, they term their kind of mindset as toxic, but that's not toxic. But they nail everything together to bring it into what they want or what society tries to portray as a man. Right? So in one breath, they call all of these things toxic, but then the pop culture describes this random superstar who is on stage with 15 women throwing themselves at him and talking about how much millions he have and how he's doing anything he wants whenever he wants as a man. So it's a confusing situation for somebody trying to navigate manhood coming through, especially a lot of young men coming through without male role models. Trying to understand what a man is becomes very confusing.
I think that is the response is quite on target. Thank you very much for that response. Let me just clarify. My response to toxic masculinity was in the context of the movement that the term toxic masculinity comes really out of, or what it seeks to do. And so the idea, I use the term the feminine side, using what the society usually uses. And I did mention the labels that we place on things that gives a particular a response. And I agree with you in that masculinity is masculinity. So what we have done, what society has done, is we have assigned compassion to female. We have assigned nurture to female, but not understanding that compassion and nurture is also masculine. It's also male, rather. I'll use the term male. It is also male. And so a man being compassionate doesn't make him female. A woman being firm doesn't make her male. You know, so I think, but I'm happy that you raised that point to clarify that reality. And the whole idea of that intention to move or to erode the idea of maleness and masculinity.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just have since toxic masculinity refers to men who's not supposed to show weakness or show their true feelings, right? My question is, even your emotions, you hear you're not supposed to cry as a male. So my question is to the panel, how could that affect male mentally?
Yeah.
All right. Well, how could that affect the male mentally? And, I would draw a reference to an iceberg, right? You're on the ocean, you see this iceberg, but you only see a small portion of it. Think of that portion of aggression, but below the water is the same feelings of guilt, is the same feelings of fear, or feelings of all sorts of things that would lead to that particular anger that you're experiencing. And it creates a bottleneck effect as it relates to the emotions, because the emotions that a woman experiences, men experience the same emotions, right? But as a way to survive in this particular society, right, they put forth domineering, aggression, because that is how it is acceptable. From growing up as a child, that is what is acceptable. You fall down, dust yourself off, get up, with the girl you would hug her up and stuff like that. So the quote-unquote big emotions, the man would not express that. How it affects your mental health, it could lead to a place of where the word is catharsis, bottled up, and then it just blow up on somebody, explode. And we see it today in society with police officers. We see it with normal men, because you're just walking around with so much strain, so much baggage. Nobody to particularly talk to, because if you talk to that person, you may be seen as weak also. Right? So that is how it affects your mental health. Recently, I would have done a study with police officers. right? And it, talking about self-care in police officers and seeking mental health services, and consistently in the study, what they would have mentioned is that if they seek to go and see social services, they can't let nobody know that. Because one of the common words is that they will be seen as a soft man. So they can't do that. Right? So if you can't do that now, how do you operate, even as an officer, even as a normal man? How do you operate in society? Right? You just walk around with baggage, and sometimes you see irritability, aggression, right? And we see it even in certain professions, as I mentioned, police officers.
Let me just add to that. In the school context, many of my young men associate these, what they consider soft traits, with being a girl. So I would have taken it upon myself to show them that it's okay for a man to tell the next man, brother, I love you. Brother, I care for you. So initially when I went into the classroom and I said, guys, sir, love you today. Sir, you like boys. Because that is what they were socialized into. To think that if a man expresses love to our next man, it has to be that he is on the other side. So I am trying to teach my boys kindness, compassion, gentleness, and so forth by the way I interact with them. Now, we have an advantage. We grew up in the church. We know the right thing from the wrong thing. I'm in a school where 90% of them don't go to church. 95% of them don't believe in Jesus because of their background, because of their circumstances. It's a Seventh-day Adventist school, but the majority of the students are not Seventh-day Adventists, don't believe in God, believe that they have never had an encounter with God. And the home environment in which they grow up, when they leave that environment, they have to be hard to survive. I can't show any feelings. I can't show any fear. So they put on this facade, this mask of, I don't care, nothing could break me, nothing could hurt me. But when you meet them, that's around their friends. But when I call them in the office and I talk to them one-on-one, many of them tears streaming down their eyes about their daddy who left. And the mom, and they can't talk to anybody, and nobody care about them. And this is the only way they know how to survive. So when they're in the classroom and a teacher says, boy, shut your mouth, the first thing is, you opposing me, I need to oppose you, aggression. As my brother said, that is the only way they know how to treat with these things, by showing aggression. So the adult males like us and that are in the audience, the task is a great task to re-socialize young men out of the thinking that to be kind, to show love, to show compassion, to show forgiveness is something that is soft and womanlike. We have to re-socialize our young men. It affects their mental capacity. It affects them being able to understand their own emotions. So now when they're dealing with a situation with another young man or another young woman in school, they don't know how to deal with it. A young man came up to me, sir, this girl, that was my girlfriend, she stopped talking to me. I said, what going on? Tears rolling down his eyes, sir. Her friend tell her I too dark. So at the point in time, I cursed both of them out. But he sit down by me crying because it hurt him that this young girl said, her friend told her, that boy too dark for you, forget him. And she told him, boy, you too dark for me, so we done. As a man, he don't know how, he couldn't function in school. He out of class on the corridor walking up and down. I said, boy, what's going on with you? Sir, right now I can't function. Tears rolling down his eyes. I said, come, let's talk. And he was able to open up and share. But the girls didn't see that though. You understand? The girls didn't see that side of him. As men, we always have to be brave and show we're tough. But sometimes in our quiet moments, we are alone crying, which is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if I could add, when a man has a mental understanding, concept that is toxic about manhood, when his understanding of manhood is toxic, the result is the same idea, toxic manhood, toxic male, meaning that as they both describe so profoundly, when that we as men are taught, as we grow up, we are taught to only be as a male, you can only express your emotion in two ways: aggression or withdrawal. So either when somebody do something, you watch them and you walk away, or you get vexed and you're loud up, but you're stupid man, don't come around me, and so on. And that is manhood, and that's where the young man would have done. She said what she said, and that's how he know. But then the reality is that he has an emotional reality, and so not understand or not being taught how to use that in a healthy way will cause him to continue behaving in a way that destroy his humanity, destroy his manhood. And so this spiral, rather than going up, will continue to go down.
All right, and as we continue, we have a couple more questions, but I want to pose a question to the panel. I teach. I have a student. He graduated now, but I always had a hard time connecting, because I know life and circumstances is very different for different people, right? And he want to be a macho man real bad, right? And it's only recently, honest to God, only recently that I realized that feelings is something that important and you need to deal with it. As 26 years old, ridiculous. But you know, the ruler, recognize, understand label and all of these kind of things. So I try my best with the students to treat them as people, understand that when I was 15, 16, 17, your emotions out of whack and you can't control it all the time. So you don't get the harshest treatment all the time. But how am I to try to guide him out of that? Because the truth is that I only have an hour or two with him, and then he going back to that circumstance that's horrible. So how am I to tell him, now you could be a regular human being, treat people like people, but when he leaves here and he goes home, he have to survive, right? And survival don't allow for, well, you know, we could do something different. Now we had a fight. We had a, you know, square up. How could we do something like that? How are we going from this position to that position? What's the practical steps?
So I'm going to start. It's in my mind an appropriate answer to that question, and it begs for the answer to what is manhood, and the defining from a biblical context of who we are as a man. And when you think about who we are as men, the best definition of manhood really would come from God. Yeah. And I would find that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, which tells us, and God created man in his own image. And so if I'm to define manhood, I'm defining manhood as the image or the reflection of God. Yeah. And so as a man, I am a reflection of God. So to really define or to understand myself, not define, but to understand myself, I have to start to look at who God is, because I'm designed to reflect him. And so in a case like the young man, it's really a deconstruction of his understanding of what manhood is. So he's striving, his self-esteem is not intact. And so he's striving to meet what the world is saying, this is who you are. But in reality, it's not, what they are saying is not who he is. So he really have to be able to find, or get an understanding of, I am the image of God, and I'm to reflect God, and that is found in my connection with God and being human. So it starts with helping him to understand who he really is, understand his identity, appreciate himself for what God designed him to be. And so with that understanding, of course, there's the modeling. The reality for him is that he's seen a lot of quote-unquote successful men around him and in the popular culture and so on. And in his mind, that is what manhood really is supposed to be. But we can show him that there are men who are actually far more successful than the people that he is looking at. And then showing him the qualities that these men possess. Showing him that when a man is able to love his family, put his family first, his child is able to come to him and love him and have a good time, it gives a far deeper satisfaction than the idea that I have a big car and a big house and I have to compete with my brother because of what he has and so on. And with that reshaping, he will settle in himself, find himself, and then be able to relate to life from a different perspective. Those are just some quick ones. I know the others have some others.
That is the answer, the correct answer, as a Seventh-day Adventist brother. But as I indicated before, I'm in a school with 95% of my students not Adventists and don't believe in God. Their circumstances are such that they can't see God as caring for them or even existing. The mere fact, Joshua, that you recognizes that this young man is in need of help says a lot about you and your emotional awareness and about you being a good man. Now, one of the things, because it's difficult to speak to a young man like that and tell him the Bible say, and God says, because from my experience, God ain't do nothing for me. Because I going back in a community where it's only gang warfare, where it's cursing, I go in a home where my father not there, or men coming in and out, mommy working, whatever. That is his reality. And in order for him to make that connect with God, you have to be that connect. You have to be that conduit to bring him to where you want him to be, where he understands and sees God. He has to see from you and your experiences. Hey, but Joshua, he went through this too like me, boy. He understands what I'm feeling. Because if you can't understand his situation, if you can't understand his mindset, if you can't ask him questions, boy, how this making you feel? Where you live in? How that makes you feel to not have a dad? If you just jump into Jesus, say, boy, he forget you long time. You now have to bring him to that place where he recognizes Jesus, and he does that through his interaction with you. Because you are a godly man. You could now, after you bring him to a certain point, he's about how you do, how you saw, how you reached to this place, and you could now point him and say, boy, I wasn't always saying no, but it was because of the grace of God. Because all of us, like you mentioned, in 15, 16 years old, even though we grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist home, we knew what it meant to be teenagers.
Yeah.
That we participated in things that we knew we should not be participating in, but we did it anyway.
Yeah.
So far less for somebody who has zero encounter with God, who never went to Sabbath school, me telling him what Genesis 1, whatever says. You understand? So my young men, for instance, we went on a field trip recently, and they came with a big boom box. I said, Lord Jesus, what you put me in here now? Pressure. We're going to a nice place, do a little workshop. During lunchtime, I hear music blasting. I can't understand the words, all I know is cursing something. Now, blood rushed to my head, so I rush up to them. But by the time I reach, I say, God, calm my soul. Because the intention is not to create an argument. Because if I approach them in that way, they're going to raise up for me. So I sit down and I say, guys, look down the music, let's have a discussion. I say, who's singing there? Some name I don't know. What? What's the name of that song? Some name I don't know. Where's the lyrics? They say, so, think, big, 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 big. I say, okay. I say, that's what the man's saying. I say, me name here, that I don't know what the man's singing there. They start to laugh, sir, boy, you old. I say, so tell me where you'll get it from that music now. What that music doing for you? The sister it is, give us peace. Right now my head hot. So right now I want to calm down. You know, I'm talking like them, eh? So I want to calm down right now. My head hot and this kind of music. I say, so give me a verse. Give me a verse. He was talking about violence and woman and I say, what about that verse is peace? If you have to be watching behind your back, running on a man with a gun, have multiple women, where's the peace? And that is the angle I took it from, and they started to think. Mine started to think, they say, sir, well, it's not really about, I just like the music then. I say, babe, just tell me it's about peace. I say, so the music not affecting or impacting you? I say, what are some of the emotions that come from listening to the music? So I feel like this man, I could just write back. I say, exactly. So, you notice the mind is, first he said peace, then he said the music telling them to write back for whoever. So even in their own minds, they're confused. But society tells them, pop culture says, this is the in thing to do. Walk around with your boombox, listen to this particular song, because if you go in the classroom and you don't know who this artist is, and you don't know this song, something wrong with you, and you are excommunicated from the group. So a lot of them get into these things not understanding why and how, and for a lot of them, this is what they hear in the community, this is what they listen to before they go to bed, and it impacts and affects how they live. And unbeknownst to them, they can't make the connection that this music, these friends are aligning with, affecting how I relate to life, affecting how I see my own life. So instead of dealing with the feelings of sadness, the feelings of fear from daddy not being home and the environment being an unkind and unsafe one, I deal with it through the only way I know how. So as men, Joshua, we have to see that and not just throw scripture and tell them come to church on Sabbath. But we had to be able to sit down and ask the questions. Tell them I was young too. I made mistakes too. Plenty mistakes. But I was able to rise from it through the help and grace of God. But they have to see you first. And they have to connect with you first. And the only way they can connect with you is if they feel that you understanding them.
Yeah.
Not just giving advice, but understanding them and their situation before you give them advice.
All right.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, and you raise a lot of important points, and I would like to say that Jesus met people where they were. So in terms of understanding their environment, understanding them, why they think, how they think is very important. And also in terms of, as you mentioned, modeling behavior, that is very, very important. And you may not see the results one time, it's not linear. Where you'll see it like you talk to him today, tomorrow you change, because when you understand this thing called neuroplasticity, where the brain creates new pathways, it's very difficult, right? So sometimes you may still continue with the behavior, but down the road, you may remember, right? And that is also important.
All right, lovely. So we're going into the next section, which is faith, purpose, and emotional health. And actually, the first question was answered by Brother Winchester already. So the first question was, how does the Bible define manhood and emotional maturity compared to what we see in culture? So you answered the first part of it, right? And again that, so we're skipping on to the next question. All right, so can faith and therapy work hand in hand to support men's healing? And healing is a buzzword as well, right? Everybody needs to heal from something. I do agree with it, right? I know I have some very wild thoughts, but I live life and you move on with what you move on with, right? God will heal me when He comes. But so what do you guys think about therapy and God? Because I remember they had a lot of talk about, everybody should see a therapist, and you have all kind of issues that you don't know about, and they're supposed to go and look at a healthy me and tell me, yes, something wrong with you, right? What do you guys think about that in the context of the Bible and Adventist beliefs? Can it work together, hand in hand?
It has to work together hand in hand. But as it relates to therapy, that is something that men associate with disaster. Because somehow we're going to get tripped up, and somehow it's going to be our fault.
For sure.
So, and as men, remember, society has trained us a particular way, internalize the emotions and your feelings. So if a therapist is asking me to tell them how I feel, I don't know how to even start to express how I'm feeling, or even be aware of what it is I'm feeling. But therapy is something that, if it works, that works hand in hand with faith. Because at our school, we have a guidance officer. The majority of persons who go to see the guidance officer are the female students. But recently we have started to see, we changed the day and the office, because the associated day and the office with the guidance officer coming to what do you call it, to shrink them.
Yeah.
So we changed the office. We said, hey, what? We're going to the library, and we're not going to use the guidance officer. We're going to use a teacher. So the teacher goes to the library on a lunchtime and invites students who want prayer. And you will be surprised, the majority of students who actually go to the teacher for prayer are male students. Say, miss, we just want to pray. We wanted to pray for us. Sir, we just wanted to pray for us. What do you want us to pray for? I just need help. That is how they express it at the point in time. They don't understand what they internalize. They can't explain it. All they know is they're feeling something and they want prayer. Now, if you ask those same boys to go to the guidance officer, once you say guidance officer, they pull back one time. No, good. That's for the girls, sir. That's not for me. Yeah? And the guidance officer is a female. But the thing about it is the person who is praying for them is a female as well, female or male. But they don't see it as a guidance officer trying to get me to talk about love and how I feel sad and what I'm afraid of. They see it as I come in just asking for prayer. What do you want prayer for? I just need help. And that says so much. Just saying that I need help speaks volumes. Without the teacher saying, well, explain to me what help means now. As the guidance officer will do the follow-up questions. She doesn't ask any follow-up questions. Whoever the teacher is, no follow-up questions. Whatever you want prayer for, that is what they pray for. And we see more and more male students come in. And as they continue to come, they start asking for more and more specific things. So it starts with help, then pray for my mom, or pray for my dad, or pray for me not to hate my dad, or for me to turn out to be an alcoholic like my dad, or for me to not be abusive. And those specific things you start getting eventually. Now, sending them, I say, well, let me refer you to the guidance officer for help now to give you some climb up one time. So we have included this alternative, especially for the male students, and we are seeing good results.
All right. I just jumping in with my thoughts because I know you might touch on it somewhere down the line, but I totally agree with all that's been said in terms of connecting the faith and the therapy, and it working hand in hand. Because people would look at their physical selves, you do a once over, you go and do a checkup, but we have a tendency at times to separate your mentals, like if it's not susceptible to sin like the rest of your body. So the rest of your body, you could go and do a routine checkup, but you wouldn't do a check for your mental health. And that is because of how this issue has been branded and continues to be positioned in people's mind over years, like years and years and years of work. So just saying that I agree totally with the need for some interventions, with whichever way it happened, whether in the form of prayer or somebody who's more further along the journey and has that consciousness to go and sit down with an officer or something, however it comes. But another question I wanted to ask, because looking at the team, mental health, and self-esteem and pop culture and so on, and we know that a lot of the issues exist
in a digital space. And a lot of the pressures come from far and wide. So yesterday it was just the boys in your class. If it had 30 out in the class, you get any pressure from the 30 and maybe 30 from Form 1A and Form 1B, and that is it. But now you're exposed to everything with the internet. We spoke about modeling and it being so critical in helping to address these issues with young men. So the question I want to ask now is, how important is it for us to model in all our spaces? So today, your physical address and your email address almost carrying the same weight. Your digital presence is much more important to much of the world than, or just as important to much of the world as is your physical presence, right? So, understanding that fact, that half of you, not just loosely, half of you is what is online. How important is it for us to ensure that we do that modeling online? So I give an example of myself. You know, I hear in church, I go out there and if it's to pray, if it's to sing, whatever it is to do, I open here. But how important is it for men who may see themselves as further along the mental health healing journey to portray those positive attributes online where a lot of these young people are and can benefit from it, you know? How important is it? I'm not sure if I've been clear enough. How important is it to model those positive behaviors online?
Yeah, so I would say that is very important because just as there are unhealthy representations of a man, may it be in social media, celebrities, it's good to give or portray the option of that they are actually healthy representations where persons are, patterning God, patterning the characteristics of Christ, who are going about things with integrity, who are self-aware in terms of their feelings and emotions, and are balanced in their approach. So you give, persons who are probably less further along, that idea that, okay, I could take this path also. The only option is not taking the left road. The right road is also one that I could choose. So in terms of, as my brother here was talking, what came to my mind is mentoring and how important that is. And maybe somebody right in the community, right, where you could mentor somebody, take one person under your wing and stuff, and talk to them, because our next thing too is in terms of you actually modeling vulnerability. I think that is very important as a man, right? To model vulnerability to somebody who is, not so far along on their healing journey, so that they would know that, okay, it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel traumatized. It's okay to experience these various things, right? Because it all adds to being that man that God wants us to be.
When it comes to the question, and I agree, of course, I think it's a very important question you raise, because what the mindset of the generation, especially those who are online, they are looking for the hypocrites, or if they not necessarily looking for the hypocrites, but when they see a hypocrite, they will cut off. Yeah, they wouldn't want to hear you. So it is that critical. If we really want to reach them, we have to be able to reach them in every space, not just physical or not just in church, but on the basketball court, on the text messages, the communication, the conversation that I got myself involved when I responded to somebody who gave a racial comment, and I got upset, and I sent out, and they said, but look what he's doing, and so on, and so how I impact them is very important in my being able to reach them. And of course, mentoring, even in what I do, the conversation that they see me doing online is important. That sends a very subtle message, but powerful message to them in terms of how they relate to life and the possibility of another option. Yeah. Coming back to the question of faith, I was really trying to pull because I think I heard about three questions. In terms of faith and mental health.
Okay, so I expounded on the question, so I really vanilla one. Can faith and therapy work hand in hand to support men's healing?
Right. So faith and therapy. So a few weeks ago we were having a similar kind of conversation. When it comes to therapy and persons receiving therapy, the first thing that we have to understand is that the person receiving the therapy has to want the therapy and understand the need for the therapy. If I'm trying to have let's say for example, a counseling session with an individual, but the individual, and I keep forgetting your name, Elda. James was saying, the young men, their perception to that whole guidance counselor thing is you're trying to make me a shrink and so on. That's not real for me. So that is not for me. In fact, I associate that with the girls, emotions and feelings and so on. So for them, trying to do that in that method, with that approach, would not work because they wouldn't receive it. In order for therapy to be impactful, the individual must be able to come to the place where they are able to realize there is a need and this can help.
Yeah.
Yep. And so the purpose of therapy, the purpose of counseling, the purpose of helping somebody with their mental health experiences is really about taking the person to a journey where they look deeper inside and understand themselves. That's the heart of it. There's a lot of teaching, mentoring, modeling, and so on for the individual because it's really about the individual being able to connect with what is really happening with them. And not that the counselor is a genius who is coming to fix me. And once they take that approach, then there will be some challenges. So the therapy can be effective once the right understanding is had. And of course, it means that the counselor has to take the appropriate approach in the case you shared there, recognizing the issue. They were able to use the situation, understand the mind of the boys, and find an approach that will be able to reach them. And of course, even in that experience, you can bring them to a place where you could have the same kind of conversation that will lead them to be able to recognize where the challenge is and treat and give them tools and techniques to treat with the challenge. So the therapy is really about providing the individual with the appropriate tools and techniques to deal with whatever challenges that they are going through. They have to apply it. Of course, I could model and give them examples of they have to apply it. And so the idea is to bring them to a place where I can function without having to come and sit down in an office with you. I normally tell the students, ever so often I will check in with my counselor. Right? So it's like, it's not that you are, okay, you just go by your counselor. You understand? Yeah. Because I'm saying that it is not because something is wrong with me, but I want to be able to ensure that my mental health is in a good place and that there isn't something underneath eroding. Now, the reality is, with my understanding, the foundation of my every action is my faith, my belief in God. And of course, when we say faith, in that context, we're not necessarily talking about the substance of things hoped for, but we're talking about your spiritual belief.
Yeah.
And the foundation of it is your spiritual belief. So the human being is six-dimensional, and I mentioned that several times. So there's the physical and so on that we see, and so we tend to gravitate and respond to the physical, the vocational and so on. But the foundation and the deepest and most powerful level is the spiritual that tends to be ignored the most. And the hub of all the other issues can be found in my understanding of the spiritual. And so even as we approach these young men and helping them to understand even masculinity and so on, and treating with our mental health, my approach comes from the foundation that there's a spiritual anchor that guides my every action. And every other methodology comes out of that spiritual foundation. So my faith, my spiritual foundation is the most important element in the entire journey. And so how does it impact? It is critical that I am connected with God. I'm connected with my spiritual dimension as I enter into this journey. That will allow, and also allows me, even in this situation, to experience God speaking to me. And when I connect with that, so for example, a young man might be expressing deep aggression, and the deep aggression is coming from the fact that he saw his father abusing his mother from 4 years old. And even after he left, he abandoned him. And after he abandoned him, he said he was going to come to take him to the football, and he never came several times, his birthday. And so over the years, there's the build-up of anger that evolved into resentment and so on, that give the boy a natural, aggressive response, that bitterness. But the foundation of it comes from forgiveness.
Yeah.
He has not come to the point where he can forgive it. In fact, the idea of forgiving his father is obnoxious, because I'm not going to forgive him. But the reality is that the foundation of it is that if he doesn't come to the point where he's able to go past what his father did in the past, he will be stuck in that place.
Yeah.
So the faith is critical. How I apply it has to be skillful.
Okay. And piggybacking off of what Kandel said, a lot of times people feel as though they go through the same things alone. So this child would feel as though this is my story and I am the only one to tell it, right? But there's so many other people who went through that same thing, and being able to be vulnerable is something that you guys touched on earlier. As a man, so if you went through that and you overcame that, you have so much to give to that young man. And a while back, I had a situation. I was talking to a guy, and he was telling me how he going through it, and he's sad, this and the other. And really and truly, I was able to tell him that what you're going through happened to everybody. But what happens is that people hide their embarrassment most times. So if it embarrassed me, I will keep it to myself. So you feeling like you're the only one who went through this and that and the other. And the ability to relate. So how, we have to move on to the next section, but how do you overcome that barrier? Because I forgive my dad, but I still don't want to tell everybody what he do, right? I still don't want to go out and say, well, you know, their church, because as soon as I say it, it's no longer between me and God, it's between me and God and who you decide to tell and who you decide to tell. And now I have to feel this embarrassment again. So we want to be short on this one. But how are we going to do that as a man? Being able to understand that we have power from the things that we overcome and sharing it with others.
All right. So, and that's why I mentioned the word being vulnerable, right? Where, interacting with someone as a man, who went through something, where you could be vulnerable and say, I went through that too. Because, we use the word therapy, and what might come to mind is somebody in our office and you go to them, one person, right? But there's also group therapy, right? That is something that I do also. And one of the impacts of group therapy is that they realize that I'm not going through this alone.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going through this alone. Parents, they realize, oh, my children doing this and that and whatever the case is. Some of them may cry, and then other persons may cry because they realize that they are not going through that particular thing alone. Right? So that's remind me of the question.
You see, I had a short meeting right there that wiped out the entire question. All right, but we wanted, is about how we going to
right.
relate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and this is the importance of post-traumatic growth, right? And trauma is something that all of us probably would have experienced. Maybe with our parents in school, we live in a world that is very damaging. Not just your physical body, your psychological mind, right? And post-traumatic growth is where you would have overcome, right? And you develop some level of resilience, right? And in developing that particular level of resilience, you could now talk to somebody and tell them, hey, I overcome this too, right? I experienced that also, right? So, when you talk about the idea of trauma, yes, it is something that is being thrown around in the world today, but it is something that is beneficial at the same time to sharing among persons. I guess that is why the Bible will talk about witnessing and testifying.
Yeah.
Testifying. You have your communion, you will realize, wait, that person went through that too. It gives that person strength and the ability and support now to overcome what they are going through.
Okay. And before anybody else, if they have a response, we just want to stand and close the Sabbath. Acknowledge the closing of the Sabbath. All right. We're going to, Father, I want to thank you for another Sabbath day. I want to thank you for your love and your mercy. I want to thank you for being a God that does everything well and in order. I want to ask that as we go into this upcoming week, that you be with us, guide us, help us to see the importance of living the life that you have called us to live. Help us to want to be the men and women that you would have us be there, God. Help us to represent you rightly in the things that we do and say, and understand that there is grace, but there is also power to overcome the sins that so easily beset us. Be with us, be with our friends, our family. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so we have to move very, very swiftly, right? So what we want to do is open the floor for our guests to ask a couple of questions, and then we would have a synopsis by the panelists.
While she speaks or asks the question, I'll just add to the conversation in terms of helping the young men. It really comes, from my perspective, it's really an understanding of the need for a paradigm shift. So the individual is there, and he is seeing his horizon as far as he knows. And so I am to really help him to be able to see beyond that horizon. And so the shift in paradigm, and there's no one strategic method to do that. There's a multiplicity of ways that of course, understanding the individual, that you'll have to apply to get them to see the need to shift their paradigm. Modeling is one. Giving experiences is one. But you want them to be able to see the possibility, the hope of something different that they can experience. And out of that can be birthed a change and even healing. So.
Okay. If you see me leave after the answer, it's because my husband is not here and I have to go home alone. So I want to be inside before it's too late.
Okay.
But I'm speaking I'm asking the question in the context of a woman, of a female, because hearing all that has transpired about the male and what men's mental health and how culture is transforming their whole maleness, their true maleness. Trauma, we heard, has a lot to do with what happens to a young man. So I'm asking the question in the context of male, both within the church and out of the church, both young and old. Because the young men has to grow up, and they have to grow up. When they grow up, they're going to be husbands, they're going to be, there's somebody uncle, or somebody's girlfriend, boyfriend, sorry. You know, they're going to interwoven into the affairs of life. Now, as a female, how do I navigate to assist this male who has been traumatized by his past, who does not understand his true maleness, who is not vulnerable enough to show me what is happening in his life. He's not communicating. He's not being vulnerable. And as he becomes, as he's a son, the mother, as a mother, it's traumatizing for me because I'm experiencing these things from him. As he becomes a husband now, or somebody's fiance, or a boyfriend, the infliction of his past traumas and him not understanding who he really is and how to navigate what life throws at him now. And it comes across to the female as abuse because you're so into yourself, not communicating. So it comes across as abuse to me. I have now, as a female, to try to understand what is going on in your head. But in return, I'm experiencing the pain and the hurt outwardly, what he is experiencing inwardly. How am I, or as we as women, to understand the male now that he is in a role of responsibility? How are we to help him if he doesn't want to go and get help himself, or he doesn't see the need? What can we do, and how are we supposed to navigate the maleness now? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, we get the gist of what you're saying. Just as males, we're focusing on males today, need to be re-socialized.
Yes.
Females also need to be re-socialized to accept when a male becomes vulnerable. Okay. Females are cultured to see men in a particular way, as providers, as protectors, big and strong, to save me from whoever or whatever that exists in society. And as men, we put on that coat every single day, provider, protector, before everything else. Now, if the female has to create, or the wife has to create an environment where a male feels safe enough, because as men, we don't tell stories. You ask us, how was the day? Good? Normal? We don't tell stories. Now, in a safe environment, if there's a follow-up question, a man can be vulnerable. Today was hard, babe. I felt sad today, This happened today and I felt fearful. A man does not naturally express those feelings in an environment that is unsafe. Because as men, we feel sometimes that if we open ourselves up emotionally, what we say could come back to haunt us and could be used against us, or to be used in a negative way to hurt us or harm us. So how can a woman help? By listening, by giving a hug, and not saying anything. Sometimes, because as men, we're trying to re-socialize and learn new behaviors, it takes time. So sometimes giving a hug says a lot. Knowing that the guy sitting by the table, he isn't saying anything. From his eyes, you can see he had a hard day. Instead of telling him, boy, the trash need to throw out tonight. Don't forget to wash the wares before you go and sleep. Just give a hug in silence. But we as women, you have to be able to create the environment, and you have to be aware of your own emotions and be emotionally aware as well, and have that emotional intelligence to understand what the man needs when he needs it. Because as men, sometimes we don't openly and willingly start to share and express how we feel. But if we feel safe enough, we feel comfortable enough in that space, we will share. We will open up, and we will share the things that you want us to share without feeling judged, or without feeling vulnerable, or without feeling too exposed. But we're sharing with someone who genuinely cares about me and wants my best interests and sees and wants what's best for me, generally wants to know how my day was without judging me. So it's all about the environment. Re-socializing women to accept when a man opens up, to create the space to make him feel open enough and free enough to be vulnerable. And when you get that information, you don't use it against him and make him feel that he's now weak or something is wrong with him for feeling fear or for feeling sadness.
And that goes in the same as mothers with their sons.
Correct. Same thing, same thing. The way we socialize boys and girls, tough, soft. Males, always be tough. You fall down, boy does your foot off and go and play. The girl, you hold her inside, you hug her up, and we grow up that way as men to suppress our feelings and our emotions. So to release that, a wife has to now create that space to break those shackles of societal norms and societal pressures to make a man feel comfortable enough, to feel okay enough to cry, or to feel okay enough to say I'm feeling sad, or to feel okay enough to say I feel fear without it undermining my masculinity.
Amen.
If I could add to that question a bit, the idea, one of the things that I despise quite a lot is the idea of a society constantly pitching male against female. And I think that is at the very heart of causing the issue to continue. There's a book, Man from Mars, Woman from Venus, or something like that, right? And the book is a very powerful book. But it also caused that concept to continue, that we are so different, and so we clash against each other. I also see ever so often there are a number of sessions to build women and girls.
Yeah.
But the reality is that 95% of the persons in jail are men. And when you compare the population of women to men in prison, when you compare the crimes that are done, but what is being done to build the men? And so the problem will continue simply because, from my view, we keep pitching them against each other. And so there's a need for us to educate and helping the women to understand, to be educated in the context of also who a man is. So while the man has to understand himself, the woman not only have to understand herself, but understand the true man, what a man really is. And as a result, what she chooses to accept, she has to understand that I would not accept certain things as it comes into my space. Because even for the wife, there are red flags that she would see, and because he's a man, she accepts. And then when they go into the relationship, things become more difficult and the behaviors become more distinct and so on. And now it becomes a problem. But she also has to understand what a man should be and what she chooses to accept. Mothers, and you mentioned it, mothers, when you look at it, the thing is that mothers are part of the creation of the present concept of the man that is not healthy. They are part of it. You see it, and I saw an experience where the mother was saying, well, basically advocating that it's okay for her.
All right. So I think we'll end there. But sorry, we have one more question.
Yeah. So continuing on what everybody, I can't remember who started. I think Osric was saying in terms of the safe environment and things like that. One of the things that I wish we had the time for was to discuss even how women are weaponizing their words as it relates to how we relate to men and the influence that a woman has in the life of a partner. So your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, and we very loose with our tongue sometimes. We say things and we don't understand the impact, the lasting impact, and the way that it would cause a man now to close up and to not feel like he has any safe space. Because if home is not safe, then where is safe, right? And I wish we had the time to look, I guess, some other time in some other conversation. But just, yes, men are often in the spotlight for doing wrong to women, but women, not easy either.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, I remember listening to, I don't know how, I was on YouTube, I clicked the music, I didn't know what I wanted to listen to, I clicked the music section, and they have a top 100 list over. I listened to a song, and I lost all hope in humanity from a young lady, right? And I was like, this is what these people listening to? This is what they believe? But I had to be a hermit, because what is this? And listen to another song the other day, and it seems as though, as a young man, I feel like we need, especially for men's program, we need to talk more about real men's issues like this. You now have a society that says a woman is always ready, right? A woman is always ready and always prepared for everything that life has to offer, right? So when I say, nah, this is sandwiches, this is time for me to leave this situation, I'm a bad guy, because she was ready for marriage and she was prepared. She had everything in her locker to be a wife. But I am a child now, because I'm not prepared for that. I say, all of these things. This is not from personal experiences, by the way. But this view that you are now, if I'm not doing what you want me to do, I'm not really a man. I'm not doing these things that you want. So, but he's a boy and he's not really a man. And for me at least, it turns me off of a lot of, you just become so vigilant, because you don't ever want to be in that situation that now you judge young ladies even harsher than you should, probably. So you're in a situation now where you have to come with the grace of God, with Elijah and the trumpets and all these things, for me to take it seriously.
Okay, so I just have one brief comment. Just given everything that was said, I kind of just want to go back to what Izzy asked earlier about our physical as well as our social presence. More specifically, the social presence. So I remember watching something once where they said if a man is not getting what he needs presently in his physical space, he'll go to the digital platforms to find it. And the reality is there's so much propaganda and false information that is all over the internet. And so I would say that it's extremely important, even just given all of the things that we would have spoken about, for people who know what is right, who have Bible-based definitions and understandings of what a man is, to put it out there. Because the devil has other people putting things out there that is, there's truth, and then it's mixed with a lot of things that aren't, which is what tends to deceive men. You have Andrew Tate saying, yes, a man is supposed to be strong and he is supposed to be a protector. But then he's also telling you, yeah, he's supposed to be competitive and aggressive. So you have a lot of men mixing the truth and lies together and influencing the young men in society. So as men of God, it's also important for you to put the correct thing out there as well.
Amen.
It's really important for us to understand, as people who believe in God, that this is a spiritual battle we fight in. The devil wants to create a counterfeit. God created man and woman, and he created them to coexist and be happy together. But because of sin has thwarted that. So as my brother said, it's now male against female. So as a male, once my wife says, babe, I want to talk, in my mind, society has trained my mind to put up my defenses one time, because from the time she says, I want to talk, but it shouldn't be like that. But that is how it is. I want to talk means I'm going to tell you all that is wrong with you. So as a man, you come prepared for the time and the date with all your ammunition ready to defend everything, instead of coming together, working together, babe, let me hear what you have to say, and actively listening to to what she has to say, and she actively listening to what I have to say with the common goal of resolution. But society is always pitting us against each other, and that is the work of the devil. The devil wants, I want to win, you want to win. But if I want to win and you want to win, then both of us. So we have to break all these negative perceptions about what a man is versus what a woman is. We have to break it, and we have to promote the alternative. We have to promote the original, what God has put for us to follow as an example to the world. The devil isn't ashamed to show what he wants. He wants man with man, woman with woman, man with two wives, woman with two husbands. That's what the devil wants. He wants men to not follow what he has ordained men as men to be. So my final thing is, let us as persons and people who believe in God, go back to the original. You're not sure what being a man is as young Adventist men? Go back to Jesus Christ. Go back to the Word. And God explicitly says and demonstrates who a man is. The Bible is filled with many men who had mountaintop experiences and who had valley experiences. It's a roller coaster ride. The only perfect man was Jesus. But he still had his mountain experiences and his valley experiences. He experienced a multitude of emotions. That doesn't mean that he is a feminine. That doesn't mean he's a female. That doesn't mean he's a woman. He had a multitude of emotions. He had anger, he had sadness, he had confusion, he had fear, especially in the Gethsemane scene. A multitude of emotions. And as men, let us not be afraid or ashamed to be open with who we are, how we feel, what bothers us. Because if we go in as with stoicism, where we feel but we don't express, we go into a relationship, into a marriage, where the devil is going to play the field. The devil is going to be in charge of your relationship. If as a man you're going into a relationship, you're going into marriage, thinking that you are provider, you are protector, nothing hurts me, nothing could harm me, you go into the marriage failing. And then you blame the woman, and then you blame everything else because you yourself first didn't make connection with who you are as a man. Same thing for women. Know who you are as a woman before you even think about introducing yourself to the opposite sex.
Amen. All right, so we'll ask Brother Winchester to say our closing prayer as we head out. I really want to thank you guys for coming out. It was a great session. I think that could have been longer. We could have get into the rest of questions. I think you guys have the other questions, but these are things that are important to us. And as I forgot who said it, we have a lot of girls' clubs, but we don't have the space for men to be mentored and to be developed the same way anymore. I think it was you, Brother Winchester. So we need to make time for this and understand that it's not going to get better if we don't make it better. It's God's work, but we have to step in there and be the example to the young men and in our community who perpetuating this behavior. And they have 16 women, so 16 children probably along the way. And then we have that rolling and rolling and rolling, and that is what Trinidad will become if we don't step in and say a piece, right? So thank you once again. And we will probably have to continue along with the other questions some other time. But Brother Winchester, you could just give us a prayer to send us off.
I think you could stand if it's the closing prayer. Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity where we could have had this conversation in a safe environment. Lord, it is one thing to talk about this issue, and we know that the devil is angry today. We know, Lord, that he will continue to bombard manhood, to bombard fathers, and to bombard the priests of the homes, and to bombard and to continue to share concepts that tell the man that he is not worthy, and to plant ideas even in the pop culture, on the comedies, that the man, his input is not necessarily valuable. But Lord, you have an intention for humankind, both men and women. We are asking, Father, that as a church, that we will understand our identity and live our identity according to your demands, your standards, your examples, your teaching, your influence. Help, Lord, that we are able to stand firm. Help us to be careful about the diet that we feed ourselves in relation to the sexes, and the dangerous things we absorb that build animosity against the sexes. But help us to be able to appreciate that you've designed us to work as one. And so when we step out, when we interact with each other in the church and out of the church, whether it be a wife to a husband or husband to a wife, or just a male to a female or vice versa, that manifestation will be an expression of your divine nature. And so, Lord, into your hands we commit ourselves and commit each person here. Even as we go, Lord, continue to mature in our minds the deep spiritual truths that you want us to understand, that will help us to become better people for you. Bless us as we go through this week, Lord. Keep us all safe until we meet again next Sabbath or whenever we meet again. But Lord, we pray that your hands will be with us, that you will expand our territories, and that you will keep us from evil. This is our prayer. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.